Welcome to Week 6 of the President's Athletic Conference Football Focus. I'm Waynesburg University senior Carson Fox, and this week our focus turns to the Thiel College Tomcats, who after 3 losses to open conference play are vying to turn around their season with a rivalry win on homecoming. Each week, the PAC Football Focus features one team from around the conference. We'll take a look into the program, highlight the week that was, and preview Saturday's matchups to get you ready for the upcoming weekend. Make sure to stay tuned following the Football Focus. 2 other Waynesburg University students and I will bring you the PAC Pregame Show. We'll take a look back at an exciting Week 5 and bring you the headlines of Week 6, which has many more thrilling PAC matchups on the docket. Head coach Kurt Reiser has been a cornerstone for Thiel College's football program since the beginning of the century, when he was first hired by former head coach Jack Leipheimer as the offensive line coach in 2001 and ascended to the head coaching position in 2008, after also serving as the offensive coordinator for 2 years. He's relished the fact that he's been able to return home, transition from high school to collegiate coaching, and stay at one school in the ever-revolving world of college football.
Originally from the Western Pennsylvania area, so it was great for me to get back, be closer to family and things, and to have the opportunity to coach college football. And started out as the offensive line coach and learned a lot from John Marshka, who was our offensive coordinator at the time, and now the head coach at Albright College out in Reading, PA. And, you know, we took a program that was struggling and we built it into a conference championship team in 2005 and went 10-0 and had a great experience doing that. And then a couple of years after that, Coach Leipheimer stepped down, and I had the opportunity to become the head coach, and I jumped at that opportunity, and it's been good. We've struggled a little bit the last couple seasons trying to get above 500 and things, but we're working hard to try to do that.
Reiser specifically points out to the early 2000s era as an exciting time in Thiel's history, when the program was building itself into a PAC power and won the conference in 2005.
The fondest memories are early on when we were here of trying to build the program and then having guys really buy into what we were doing and stick it out. In 2003, we were 3-7, and then in 2004 we went 7-3, which was a huge turnaround. I got a lot of recognition for that, and then to turn around in 2005 and go 10-0 was outstanding. And we had 3 really memorable games that year. We beat W&J on their homecoming in overtime at their field, and had a great game against Waynesburg in a double overtime game. And then we ended the season with a triple overtime game against Carnegie Mellon, winning down there 50-48. So those are some of the great memories. And then obviously having the opportunity to go and play in the national playoffs for the first time in school history was just amazing here on campus for the people on campus and everything.
As for Reiser's best coaching wisdom that he's gained in Greenville is finding coaches and players with great character and then witnessing them develop over time.
The greatest success that you'll get coaching college football is getting kids to buy into your program, and then success on the field is translated or gets translated from retaining players and developing players in your football program. And our goal is to try to get to a point where consistently year in and year out we have 20 to 25 seniors, and if we can do that, then we'll be successful on the field. And that starts with recruiting good kids.
On the offensive side of the ball for nearly 2.5 seasons, Thiel has been led by junior quarterback Ryan Radke, who was a PAC honorable mention in 2014 after setting a school record and finishing second in the PAC for total offense with 2,946 yards, while recording 29 total touchdowns. Reiser says he's witnessed a positive change in Radke since he became the starter midway through his freshman season.
Ryan's really developed the last couple of years as a leader. He was young and immature a little bit as a freshman when he transferred in here from Alderson Broadus, and he's developed as a leader in our program. Really is willing to go out of his way to do anything for our offense to be successful. And I think the guys respect his ability and his leadership on the field, and he brings a lot to the table. He's a tremendous athlete. He can run, he can throw the ball and those types of things. So he's done a great job to this point. A year ago he was a major part of our offense with his throwing and running, and this year teams have done a great job and kind of have limited him in what we do and things. So but he's a valuable tool to us and a very important part of what we do.
With opposing defenses keying on Radke, he's had a tough 5 games to open 2015, averaging 149 passing yards per game, completing 50% of his passes, and throwing for 4 touchdown passes to 3 interceptions. According to Reiser, his continued development boils down to 2 keys.
Well, as a quarterback, I think he can always get better reading defenses and delivering the football and those types of things. He's at times struggled a little bit with that, but he's made significant improvement even from a year ago and continues to work on that as a player.
With the offense, especially on the ground, running through Radke, Reiser is putting the onus on the men in the trenches up front to allow for Thiel to be at what Reiser considers as the offense's best, and that's running with success, which will allow for Thiel to control the time of possession as it has done for 3 seasons and take advantage of big play opportunities when presented.
We need more production out of our tailback position. We've relied a lot on Ryan to provide a lot in the run game for us, and part of the production out of the tailback position has to come from better play from our offensive line and tight ends up front. So that's what we're working on now. We're trying to get better up there so that, the guys in the backfield, the tailbacks especially, can gain more yardage.
Missing from Thiel's offense this season is 2014 PAC Newcomer of the Year, wide receiver and then freshman Marcus Johnson, who put up 827 yards on 46 catches and 8 receiving touchdowns. With Johnson gone, Reiser says it's been 2 veterans in the receiving corps who have shouldered the load as targets for Radke and served as the leaders for developing underclassmen.
We're kind of young at the receiver position. We have a couple veterans in Ronnie Howard, who's the leader of our receiving corps. Alex Servaditz is off to a good season this year and has really come a long way since he's been in our program. So those 2 guys I think we lean on quite a bit. As far as improvements, we just need to continue to get better with fundamentals and things with our young kids so that they can make bigger contributions on game day.
Thiel's official roster includes 84 freshmen and sophomores, making the Tomcats one of the youngest teams in the PAC. With that, according to Reiser, comes pluses and minuses in 2015.
We're very excited about our freshman class. We think we have some very good football players in there, but they're inexperienced. And the only way that you can get them experience is to put them out there on game day and let them go at it. And, unfortunately, sometimes the inexperience will cost you. We're finding that out. It's something that you just have to work through, and you got to continue to look for ways to get better and just make sure as a coaching staff you're putting your kids in a position to be successful.
The foundation to the Thiel defense is senior defensive end Riley Shane, who currently leads the PAC in tackles for loss and is tied for the conference lead with 4.5 sacks. According to Reiser, he's the type of player opposing offenses will have to account for on every play.
Well, he means a lot to our defense. He's the leader of our defense and the leader on our team. He brings a lot to the table with his work ethic, and he did a tremendous job this past summer. He cut weight. He's gotten slimmer, faster, so that he can play multiple positions on our D-line. Most importantly, he's playing defensive end this year, which gives us good pressure off the edge and things like that. We have said to him several times over the past couple of years that he can be dominant at times, and this year he's consistently dominant. We're really happy with his improvement to this point, and I think the second half of the season he'll put up some good numbers as well.
Last week, the Tomcats suffered a 65-14 setback to St. Vincent in a game that sparked very few positives because of the challenges the Bearcats presented in a multitude of fashions.
We have to get better. And, we really struggled in that game and credit St. Vincent for what they did. They were prepared and, they attacked us in certain ways that hurt us, obviously. And offensively, we were hampered a little bit by getting down so early and we weren't able to stay in our offense like we would have liked to. And that was a problem for us. And then it forced us into situations where we were pressing to make plays and turn the ball over a couple times, which really hurt us too as well. So for our guys, the focus is on continue to improve each and every day that we're out on the practice field and find ways to get better.
This week, Thiel battles Westminster in what has been an even and thrilling PAC rivalry over the last 4 years, specifically in 2013 when the 2 teams endured 4 overtime periods and Thiel eventually won 45-37. Reiser expecting his team to rise to the occasion this week.
is our homecoming game, and I expect our guys to come out ready to play and, hyped up for the game. And the excitement around the game is always good here around homecoming, and I think our guys will respond to that. We've had some very good games with Westminster, including that game in 2013, and we know that they're much improved, and we're hoping that we can provide a great game this Saturday and, do what we need to do to control the football offensively and stop their offense defensively and put ourselves in a position late in the game to hopefully get the win.
As for keys to victory, Reiser is looking for playmakers to step up around Radke on offense and defensively stop Westminster's 2 offensive playmakers.
We can't put all the pressure on our quarterback, which is very difficult against Westminster. They're a much improved defensive football team, and defensively we got to try to find a way to limit their offense by limiting Paul Colombo, their quarterback, and their run game with Don McKinley. Those are 2 very talented football players and doing some good things for them. So it's going to be a challenge for us, and I think our guys are up for it. I think they'll respond in the right way.
Reiser believes that moving forward, as long as his players continue to improve each week, the wins and losses will take care of themselves, and then they can look toward greater heights, as long as the core of his team can stay intact down the road. He has full faith in the coaches and program to strive toward that goal.
For us as a program, we're trying to get to the next level. The next level for us is to have a winning season and, eventually challenge for a conference championship. So, our coaches are working hard to that, and our kids are working hard toward that goal as well. For us, it's retaining our players, developing our players in our football program throughout not only the course of the football season, but in the off season as well, and then doing a great job in recruiting, finding great character kids who are good academic students who can come to Thiel and handle the rigors of the academics here and who can stay here and develop in our program and be good football players for us.
Thanks again to head coach Kurt Reiser and Thiel College for being featured as this week's PAC Football Focus. Coming up next week, we'll focus on the Golden Tornadoes of Geneva College, who have the tall task of going to Crestview Hills, Kentucky, to potentially upset the nationally ranked and undefeated Thomas More Saints this week. Stay with us after the break. We'll break down all of Week 6's game action on the PAC Pregame Show here on PACathletics.org.
I'm Joe Anderko, Commissioner of the President's Athletic Conference. Want to know what makes the PAC so special? Here's a few reasons why.
Comprised of 10 private institutions and 2 affiliate members, the PAC remains unique in this era of high-pressure college athletics. Now sponsoring 21 sports as it celebrates over 60 years of competition, the PAC is regarded as one of the elite NCAA Division III conferences in the nation. Our student athletes excel in athletics as well as the classroom, with numerous postgraduate scholarship winners, over 150 academic All-Americans, and over 900 academic honorable recipients with a 3.6 GPA or higher in the past year alone. Want to learn more? Visit us at www.pacathletics.org or follow the President's Athletic Conference on social media.
Academic and athletic excellence since 1955, the President's Athletic Conference.
We're back. It's the PAC Pregame Show here on PACathletics.org. Carson Fox alongside my usual cast of characters, Andy Stanko and Sean Saputo. And we'll get into all of Week 6's matchups, but let's take a look back at Week 5. And guys, I think the number one storyline of Week 5 had to be Thomas More finally overcoming the monkey on its back that was Washington and Jefferson and finally beat the Presidents to put themselves in the driver's seat at the top of the President's Athletic Conference standings, and the game didn't squarely fall on quarterback Jensen Gebhardt's shoulders like we thought. It was running back C.T. Tarrant who stole the show with 37 carries for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. The defense rose to the occasion, intercepting quarterback Pete Coughlin 4 times in this contest, and possibly an overlooked stat. Thomas More a perfect 5 for 5 in the red zone against what head coach Mike Sirianni called the best defense he's had during his tenure, a statement win for head coach Regis Scaife in the program, but yet W&J is by no means out of it, guys. What did you see from the mega matchup?
Well, week after week after week after week, whenever we see the schedule for the PAC, who does Thomas More have, who does W&J have, and pretty much you can pencil in a win. This is really the biggest test for either team all season. Both teams know about it. W&J had a week to prepare coming into this matchup, and just like a season ago, it was all about turnovers when you have teams this good and teams that'll take advantage of those turnovers. And Thomas More was a team that I had been very high on. I didn't know what else the Saints needed to do to impress me through the beginning of the season, and they certainly deserve their ranking in D3Football.com. And W&J had been an Achilles heel for the Saints team. It's great to see them get a win. And now for the Presidents, it's trying to win out, stay consistent, hopefully get an automatic bid if they can't catch the Saints in the regular season.
Yeah, and with Thomas More only moving up one spot with the victory in the polls, W&J dropping 219. I see this as the voters for D3 football really looking at W&J as a team that can still make noise when it comes to playoff time should they run the table. W&J only dropping, 5 spots in the
down
polls,
to 19.
14 to 19 in the poll, or 12 to 19.
It's not a bad loss.
Yeah, wherever you look at it, they're still in line for that automatic bid spot. Didn't see a lot of Ryan Ruffing, which surprised me. Only 19 carries on the day. His carry total had been boosting throughout the season. Eventually, it started out where head coach Mike Sirianni said, we want to keep his carries down this year, keep him healthy longer. However, then it continued to rise as time went on, and then it dropped immensely this past week as Pete Coughlin threw over 50 times. So a different style of offense we saw from W&J this week, but the turnovers by Pete Coughlin was eventually the
deciding factor.
The deciding factor,
the
undoing, whatever you want to say.
All right, and then I think the other two matchups that I think we have to take a look at. Case Western Reserve making another statement win, proving to be another player in this conference. Ripped off 3 straight wins after falling 1 point short on week 1 to nationally ranked Chicago, including this week, beating Bethany 59-20 after scoring 45 unanswered points in the second and third quarters after trailing 13-7 in the second quarter. Rob Kuda coming up with 2 long passing touchdowns while adding nearly 300 yards of total offense in the day and 3 scores. But on defense, PAC Player of the Week Scott Soren had a day. 7 tackles, 2 for loss, a forced fumble, an interception, 4 pass breakups, a sack, and a quarterback hurry. It's fair to say, in my opinion, that Case is also a contender for the PAC title after week 5.
And looking at Bethany, really, this is a team that we considered one of the top 4 teams in the conference coming into this season. They haven't given up 59 points in a long time. They've played Mountain Union the last 2 seasons, and Mountain Union hasn't scored 59 points. For Bethany, maybe not what we expected from the Bison coming into this season, but certainly Case Western Reserve, when they entered the PAC, there was a lot of hype on their end. Hey, we could get an automatic bid if we win this conference. They were sort of vanilla last season, sort of bland. 3-5 in the conference. This is what they envisioned, and certainly a 59-20 win over Bethany. Extremely impressive.
All right, let's move on. Let's get into it. Ran a little overtime, but it was a very exciting week 5 in the PAC. But let's keep the momentum going into week 6. In our first matchup, the Geneva Golden Tornadoes, fresh off a bye week, 2-2, 1-1 in PAC play, traveling down to Crestview Hills, undefeated, 5-0. 3-0 in PAC play, a 1 o'clock kickoff. Now, Thomas More has won the last 6 contests against Geneva, including the 2012 4-overtime thriller that ended 50-48. The Saints have owned the scoreboard over the last 2 years, 103-3 since that contest was played. Guys, what do we see in this matchup versus Geneva? Fresh, but going down for Thomas More's 5th out of the last 6 contests at home.
Well, Geneva's a team that's had a softer schedule early on in the season, and they've played 500 football against Frostburg State, Grove City, Waynesburg, and CMU. The rest of the way, Thomas More, Case Western, W&J, Bethany, St. Vincent, and Westminster. How many wins do you see in that? That's a tough stretch for any team in the conference, really the heart of the PAC. And the positives of Geneva so far this season, total defense, top 3, one of 3 teams to allow fewer than 350 yards a game, with the other 2 being Case and Thomas More. That's very good company there. Pass defense, 2nd in the conference, and they're good at taking care of the football. Only 4 giveaways all season, 2nd fewest in the PAC. But really the question for Geneva coming out is, are those Geneva's strong points or just a product of the competition Geneva has played so far? Unfortunately for the Golden Tornadoes, last in total offense, 2nd to last in rushing, under 100 yards a game, 2.5 yards a carry, and they give away over 80 yards a game in penalties, and they've only made 8 red zone trips all season. That's the worst in the PAC. And in terms of the numbers they put up, 8th in scoring offense, 8th in scoring defense, and you look around the conference, you look at the quarterback play, Aaron Channing, I don't think falls in the top 5. He's somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. 7th in passing yards per game, a completion percentage of just 53%, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5 touchdowns coming against Waynesburg, a game we're quite familiar with. And Dylan Jones, he ran the ball well against Waynesburg, but now under 4 yards a carry. There are 4 guys with 10 catches or more, none of them over 200 yards receiving. And against CMU, not a good look. 35-7. Aaron Channing, 12 for 27, 142, and an interception. It's going to be extremely challenging for Geneva against a Thomas More team that certainly deserves its ranking and coming off the biggest win in years.
Yeah, and we mentioned it earlier, Thomas More beating W&J, and really, if it wasn't 4 turnovers for Thomas More, who knows how this game could have ended against the Presidents. Thomas More had 4 interceptions on the day against quarterback Pete Coughlin. All 4 interceptions went for points, 24 points off of turnovers by the Thomas More Saints defense, 9 tackles for loss, the 4 picks, 8 pass breakups, 3 sacks. Pete Coughlin was hurried a lot in this contest. C.T. Tarrant was outstanding. Goose Cohorn was the leading receiver with 90 yards.
And he's tearing up the conference right now in yards per catch.
Oh, it's outstanding. 5 receptions for 90 yards, so that gives you a little taste of just how many yards per catch that Goose Cohorn has. And he had 2 of the 3 touchdowns that Jensen Gebhardt threw, who really had an efficient day, but very average day for him at the same time, only going 13 for 26 for 190 yards. But this Geneva team really has to look at its defensive unit with Thomas Benyo and Jimmy Quinlan to once again lead the way for a chance to upset the Saints. 16 tackles for Benyo and 13 tackles for Quinlan in its last contest against Carnegie Mellon, despite giving up the 35 points. 2 very bright spots on that Geneva team with the defense. But right now, it's just Thomas More is in a groove that we haven't seen out of them for a couple years, really. So now it's time, can Geneva pull out the offense it did against Waynesburg, or will we see that trend last year with Aaron Channing where threw for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns against Waynesburg, and then it just dropped off to only 2 games over 200 yards the rest of the year?
I think what's going to be the difference in this game for Thomas More is the Saints' ability to balance the run game with C.T. Tarrant, who's now 2nd in the conference in total rushing, and Javier Pitts with the spread passing attack that Jensen Gebhardt employs. Geneva poses a unique matchup for Thomas More's offense using that 3-5-3 stack, so we'll have to see if the running lanes open for Tarrant and Pitts out of the spread, or Gebhardt's able to have success like he did 2 weeks ago against Westminster and pass the ball with ease. I don't think Geneva's going to be able to afford to have another subpar offensive performance like it did against Carnegie Mellon 2 weeks ago to keep up with Thomas More's offense that, granted, is going to score, guys. When 11 of your 12 offensive possessions end in either a punt, turnover on downs, or Aaron Channing's interception, and granted, this Thomas More defense is much better than Carnegie Mellon's. I think this Geneva team has to rise to the occasion. Thomas More's 3rd in the PAC in turnovers forced, and the secondary is an opportunistic one. I think that they have to employ the same type of offense that they did against Waynesburg, have a balanced attack using Dylan Jones to complement Aaron Channing, and he'll have to take care of the ball and spread it out and take advantage of the opportunity when presented to go deep to his best threat, Nick Cook.
And one last thing for Thomas More, perhaps a little bit of a letdown over such a high and a great game, a win over W&J. Only 6 punts all day, 19 other possessions going and ending in other results. And defensively for Thomas More, they bent but didn't break. W&J had a 17-play drive, took up 5 minutes, 66 yards, just a field goal. 11-play drive, missed field goal. Ryan Ruffing, 2.8 yards a kick. Defensively, they were outstanding. They did what they needed to do. Sean, you mentioned an outstanding point. 24 points off turnovers. That's what killed them last year, the turnovers, and then not being able to cash in and giving W&J possessions. And Jensen Gebhardt, front-runner, first-team All-PAC. 2 rough outings for Pete Coughlin this season. He's the front-runner. Maybe Rob Kuda, but Gebhardt's my guy right now.
All right, guys, let's move on. Our second matchup, a 1:30 kickoff in Cleveland, Ohio, and a team that we've been referencing so far in this contest is the upstart team in the PAC. Home contest for Case Western Reserve, who's 3-1, 3-0 in conference play, hosting a Waynesburg Yellow Jacket offense that got its first PAC win a week ago against Grove City, 2-3 overall, 1-2 in PAC play. And Waynesburg won the team's only meeting with Case Western Reserve last year, 35-15 in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. Willie Lavelle broke the game open in the second quarter when he ran the kickoff back 86 yards for a touchdown, and Waynesburg scored 28 unanswered points in what was arguably the Yellow Jackets' best defensive performance of 2014. But this is a totally different Case Western Reserve team from last year, and it all starts at the top of the offense with the quarterback. Sean, what do you see in this matchup?
Well, really, when you look at Rob Kuda this past week, had probably his least effective game through the air, only throwing 11 of 23 for 210 yards.
Only,
that's the thing. It was an average day in the air, completing under 50% of his passes, but still 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tacks on 88 rushing yards on top of that for almost 300 yards of total offense. But really, and we've looked at it in the past, Lynch has been the main guy in the receiving corps, but this week you see Brian Erb, 7 of the 11 receptions for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then Ethan Albers had the 2 of the other 4 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. So, but the defense, again, another outstanding point for this Case team, with 6 tackles for loss, forced 3 fumbles, only recovered 1, however, 2 interceptions, 8 pass breakups against Lincoln Reyes, and then the sack. But when we look at this Waynesburg team improving to 2-3, the defense, yes, played well, better than it has with 9 tackles for loss, the fumble recovery and 2 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, and 4 sacks. However, against an immobile Matt Pennypacker in the second half after he went down to injury later on in the game, but still managed to stay in the game and was not as effective late. Still gave up 31 points, deleted a 24-14 deficit in the third quarter, but it was Jerry Lawman that really held the reins for the Yellow Jackets last Saturday.
And for Waynesburg, you can be really encouraged from this team and this coaching staff. It's not the same thing every week that's really plagued this team, and they corrected quite a few mistakes of their 3-game losing streak. Really only 1 takeaway during that 3-game losing streak after 5 week 1 against Muskingum. 2 interceptions. They hadn't had an interception since week 1. Eli Hargis stepped in and they were thrown right at him, but he was able to make the play and really set Waynesburg up for its first score. Tyler Givens had an interception that was called back by a penalty, so that was something I was really pleased with by this Yellow Jacket defense. And then defensively in the secondary, they'd given up 3 consecutive 300-yard games, 4 100-yard receivers in the last 3 games. And Josh Peach and Brett Pinson are 2 of the better receivers in the PAC, coming into the game averaging over 100 yards combined. Pinson second in the conference in receiving yards per game alone. Pinson 1 catch, the 2 of them 5 for 70, 1 touchdown combined. The secondary rose to the occasion, and then offensively, 21 points in the second half. They were down at the half for the 4th consecutive week, and Jake Doherty was able to put together his first game-winning drive. Congratulations to him. Kevin Barnes was outstanding, 2 touchdown catches, and a couple of plays that really swung the momentum, following an interception, stripping the defensive back, and then running back a punt for a touchdown. It was negated, but Waynesburg still had excellent field position. The crowd turned in the favor of the Yellow Jackets, and the team really, momentum, you could feel it. In Case Western, I'd certainly say this is a different team. Carson, you mentioned last year's game. When Waynesburg got up 2 scores, it just felt like the game was over.
Yeah.
Case
Billy
Western's-
Beecher just couldn't put an offensive drive together.
The offense couldn't do it. The defense wasn't able to turn the football over, and that's 2 things they've improved on so much. Explosive plays offensively and turning the football over. Case Western, a much improved team coming into this season.
And just to hit on Jerry Lawman, 24 carries for 148 yards and 3 scores in that one, including the game winner on the final drive. But I just think, guys, that Waynesburg's pass defense is still young, still reeling at times, allowing 258 yards a game, which is good for 9th out of the 11 teams in the conference. And the secondary's been banged up. Josh Mundell, Ramel Reese, Christian Breisinger, all missing time. And by far, Rob Kuda is the best quarterback the Jackets have faced yet, leading the PAC by a wide margin in total offense at 355 yards per game while scoring 15 total touchdowns this season. And this receiving corps is no joke. 6 players have caught at least 7 passes on this team, led by Brian Erb, 19 for 267 yards and 4 touchdowns on the season. And I don't know if the Jackets have the caliber of starting defensive backs that can match up with Erb, Lynch, and Ethan Albers, who's a big play threat anytime he touches the ball, averaging 32 yards per catch. And we've seen it. It hasn't been as much this season, but dual threat quarterbacks have always been a challenge for this defense, though I think senior linebacker Aaron Palmer is coming into his own, been a tackling machine for this defense all season long. He's third in the conference in total tackles. I just think we have to see continued heavy doses of Jerry Lawman in the run game, but this is proving to be a stout Spartan front that allows a league low 79 yards per game. So look for freshman quarterback Jake Doherty to employ deceptive play-action passing using the tight end Dan Davis, who had 2 touchdowns 2 weeks ago against Bethany and led the team with 4 receptions last week against Grove City, adding a huge catch on the final drive to set up Lawman for the score. The defense has to keep this game within 2 touchdowns for Waynesburg to employ that type of methodical, short-passing offense that we've seen, because we've yet to see Doherty air it out that much downfield this season.
Well, I mean, I also take a look at the way this game played out between Waynesburg and Grove City, and I wonder what would have happened had Karosha been the quarterback, or if Penny Packer was completely healthy throughout the entire game and didn't come back after being walked off the field by 2 teammates.
It was close. It would have broke that 13-game losing streak.
I mean, I'm kind of there too. I think that might have happened at that point. They were up 24-14. So with Waynesburg right now, it's just a matter of momentum, I think. I think you finally have some on your side after the 3-game losing streak. You win a very tough, hard-fought game. But now you have to worry. Now you have the travel coming into play. Leaving Friday night, they did, into today, and now you have to face a Case Western team that is upstart, and I think that has definitely proven it is in the mold for one of the top teams in the PAC. It's one of the front runners for the title right now, next to Thomas More, which will, in my opinion, be a very good game between those 2 teams later in the year.
And one last note about Rob Kuda that's just been so impressive for me. He's been taking care of the football. Only 4 giveaways all season for Case Western Reserve, and they've had one of the best margins in terms of turnover margins throughout the season. It's been really impressive. And Carson, I really like the point you brought up. This is far and away the best quarterback the Jackets have played this season, and they've made some of these guys look really good. That's definitely concerning this week.
All right, let's move on. Our next matchup featuring the number 19 team in the country, Washington and Jefferson, at home. The Presidents 3-1 overall, 1-1 in conference play, losing, as we mentioned earlier, to Thomas More last week on the road in Crestview Hills, Kentucky, against an 0-4, 0-2 Grove City Wolverines team that is so hungry for a win, dropping now 14 consecutive games. W&J owns the all-time series 37-13, including the last 3 consecutive. And the major storyline in this one for both teams, after almost ending the now 14-game losing streak to Waynesburg, can Grove City bounce back and pull off the upset against a W&J team that is coming off a hard-fought loss to Thomas More that had been building up for weeks? Can W&J take care of business without being the top dog in the conference standing? Now, guys, what's your analysis on this one?
Well, for W&J, this is an opportunity to get back to basics, back to what made the Presidents so successful. I expect the Presidents to run 100 plays in this game, a frenetic pace, roughing to be going early and often, and Pete Coughlin to get back on track. And Carson, your point of not being at the very top, the tippy top of the PAC, I still have them right up there and on another level outside of everyone else, with the exception being Thomas More. Now, defensively, they've given up 30 points twice in 4 games. They gave up 30 points twice all of last regular season. But for the Presidents, the schedule gets easier. Grove City, Bethany, at Case, that's the big game. Geneva, Thiel, and Waynesburg. There's a bunch of bottom dwellers in that second half of the season, so it wouldn't surprise me to see the Presidents' numbers go way up near the end of the season, especially defensively. And that's one of the things coming into the Thomas More game. Run defense, would that be an issue? Where are the numbers for W&J? They're lower than we expected. I'd say it would certainly even out by the end of the season. And I wouldn't be that concerned if I'm the Presidents, only punting twice against Thomas More, missing a field goal. It's the 4 interceptions. That's what really hurts. And the long empty drives of 11 plays, 9 plays, 8 plays, nothing. The balance offensively is concerning. 58 passes, just 19 carries for Ryan Ruffing. You become easier to defend that way. And they allowed Thomas More to get after the quarterback and get interceptions. But you can't complain about the production out of Daniel Liss and Jesse Zubik last week. Liss, 11 catches, 155 yards. Zubik, 7 for 115 and a touchdown. They outplayed Cohorn and Vogelpool, but that didn't matter because of the run game. Carson, you touched on C.T. Tarrant. He was outstanding in the game. In turnovers, Thomas Moore +3. But Grove City, a team that played like they had nothing to lose against Waynesburg. I like their spunk. I like the surprise onside kick. They took advantage of Waynesburg penalties and made them pay, and they just needed one stop and weren't able to get it. Peach and Pinson weren't as effective as I anticipated them being. Hopefully they can get back on track in this game. Bobby Tuttle, Brandon Behringer are good players in that linebacking core. And they've certainly been more competitive, but W&J is a team that's angry and looking to get back on track in this contest.
And a couple bright spots from Grove City's game at Waynesburg. I think for the second game in a row, the Wolverines rushed for over 100 yards as a unit, and it was sophomore Marcus Ubinger leading the charge with a respectable 6.5 yards per carry. Matt Pennypecker fared decently in replacement of injured starter Antonio Caroscia, 171 yards and a touchdown through the air, and had 55 yards rushing before sacks, but did have the 2 picks. So there are some bright spots from this Grove City team. It's not like last year's squad that just couldn't put together an offense.
This Grove City team is competitive.
They're starting to gel now. I think we're finally seeing those signs of improvement of a gelling offense.
Well, guys, when we talk about this W&J team and how, what happened last week, I don't want to. He's a junior now, but can we possibly say that despite 1,108 yards, averaging 277 yards per game, that maybe Pete Coughlin, is he in a sophomore slump possibly? 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the season. Yeah. Coughlin didn't even throw 7 interceptions all of last season.
Yeah, I agree.
So are we seeing a possible sophomore slump out of Pete Coughlin? Was he maybe a little complacent coming into this season, thinking, all right, we have the best team in the PAC. We won it last year. We know what we're capable of doing. Maybe I can, simmer down some, go through the motions here and there in a couple of games, because we're not seeing the style of W&J football that we are used to seeing the past 3 years when they've won the title. 3 years ago, rolling off, 3 or 4 straight wins to win the President's Athletic Conference, beating then undefeated Waynesburg. 2 years ago, crushing Thomas More at home with that Dion Wiggin return and then running the table from there. And then last year, again, beating Thomas More down at home, running the table, going undefeated, until the Waynesburg game.
That really didn't mean anything for a PAC championship.
All of that mattered to W&J was if W&J won that game, they get a home game in the first round of the playoff.
And they won the first round.
Yeah, and they went from a 4 seed to a 5 seed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this isn't a W&J team we are used to seeing. Ryan Ruffing, not often are you going to see Ryan Ruffing be that ineffective in a game. Pete Coughlin had to throw the ball a lot more later on in the game, and that's the reason why you see 380 passing, or 360 passing for Pete Coughlin and 4 interceptions. So, not the W&J team we're used to, and defensively as well.
But I think that can easily be changed. I think as long as you put Pete Coughlin in advantageous passing situations while keeping Ryan Ruffing fresh as possible without burning him out, like head coach Mike Sirianni said at the early part of the season, this is an offense, as you said, Andy, can rival any team in all divisions of college football in total plays per game. They can just go at an unbelievable rate of offense, and you still have Zubik, Liss, Eric Scott in the receiving core that are all top 15 wide receivers in the PAC. Grove City's last in the PAC in turnovers forced, so I think this is a prime opportunity for Coughlin in the offense to rebound. Just can Grove City make this interesting, frustrate Coughlin, keep him off the field, control the ball and the clock with a solid day on the ground, because W&J has still struggled. I know this isn't the best run offense in Grove City, but can you accrue first downs, put together some long drives, keep that high-powered offense off the field?
And to touch on Sean's point about the sophomore slump, I mentioned this with the defense, but the schedule down the stretch, those games, the last 3 games, especially Geneva, Thiel, Waynesburg, if Coughlin wants to pad his numbers, I'd anticipate
you get it then.
He'd have plenty of opportunities to pad his numbers. And Westminster's a better team than they were last year. Thomas More just got him this time around. I'm not sure. The production is definitely lower, though. You're right about that.
I mean, despite, like I said, 277 yards per game, it's not the Pete Coughlin.
And he's not running the football a lot.
Or the W&J presidents we saw last year that went into every game and said, all right,
they were also giving Ryan Ruffing 30-plus carries a game. We haven't seen it. It's different. It is very different.
Do you go back to what worked?
I think we see that.
We've seen that in how many, systems in the NFL and college football and high school football. We run one system 1 year, it works all season, and then we're going to try something new here. Is it time to go back to what worked for the Presidents now that you have to chase to win the PAC?
Yep, you have to keep Ruffing fresh, though. He is really the heart and soul of that offense.
You cannot drop one more game if you want to make the NCAA tournament, because they kept you in the rankings, the D3 football did, and now it's time to prove you're worth and willing of that ranking to stay in the hunt for the tournament.
I'd never thought we would get into that highly debated segment there with W&J and Grove City considering last year's results. But let's move on, guys. Bethany heading on the road, 2-3 overall, 1-2 in PAC play at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 6 o'clock kickoff. Carnegie Mellon 1-3 overall, 1-2 in PAC play, and CMU owns the edge in the all-time series, 32-7. Most recently, Bethany broke a 6-game losing streak last year after Carnegie Mellon owned the streak from 2002 to 2007. Buys and Tartans. What do we see in this one?
Well, I mean, for Bethany, again, Eric Blinn, another stellar day. 9 receptions, 133 yards, and a touchdown. You know what you're getting out of him. Then Jalen Holmes, 18 carries, 74 yards, and a touchdown. Only 4 yards per carry on the day for Jalen Holmes. But what surprised me overall was this Bethany defense just allowing 59 points in the game to Case Western. And really, when you look at the sheets here, I mean, Bethany didn't really get outplayed that much in terms of offense. 422 yards for Case Western. Bethany almost rattled off 400 with 381 yards of offense. Just this Case Western team really found a niche against Bethany and found something that Bethany didn't have that day and took complete advantage of it.
I'll tell you what it was. It was Case Western coming up with big plays. A 52, 46-yard passing touchdowns, a 39-yard rushing touchdown, and a block punt return, all for touchdowns. And Bethany, 8 offensive possessions through the second, third, and fourth quarters either ended in a punt, turnover on downs, or 2 interceptions. So really, Case Western just ran through the middle of this game, 45 unanswered points, and didn't look back.
Well, also had 7 scoring drives that were 2 minutes and 28 seconds or less.
Big plays.
Yeah, 6 plays, 54 yards, 2 minutes, 28 seconds. 4 plays, 44 yards, 1 minute, 42 seconds. 4 plays on a short field, 15 yards, 1 minute and 3 seconds. 5 plays, 72-yard drive that ended with an Ethan Albers 52-yard touchdown pass, minute 25. Brian Erb, 46-yard touchdown pass. 6 plays, 68 yards, 58 seconds.
Scoring fast. That's what this offense can do.
39-yard touchdown run, 5 plays, 59 yards, a minute 56, and then the last one, two plays for 2 yards, 36 seconds. That's going to win you games, and this Case Western team has proven that if you make mistakes and give us the ball deep in territory, we are going to score the football no matter what.
And then on the flip side for CMU, I thought we talked on the show last week what was going to break first, the Westminster run defense or the Carnegie Mellon run game, and it was certainly not Sam Benger's best game, but still 26 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown is still something to write home about. But the CMU offense turning the ball over twice certainly isn't going to help, while giving up a safety, losing the time of possession battle by over 10 minutes, and going just 5 for 13 on third down. And a 4 turnovers forced day for this defense, but still gave up nearly 500 yards of total offense. Still a competitive game for the Tartans, but winnable had it had better offensive production, especially from quarterback Andrew Herron. And I don't. In looking into this contest against Bethany, it's no secret that Carnegie Mellon's still going to use its best weapon and one of the best weapons in the conference, running back Sam Benger. And Bethany is in the bottom half of the conference in rush defense, but there's a ton of playmakers on this Bethany front seven. Nadeem Radar, the defending conference defensive player of the year, second in the PAC in tackles for loss. Devin McClain tied for first in the PAC in sacks, and Donovan Hayden and Larry Potier second and eighth in the PAC in tackles respectively. This is no easy task for Benger, so can Andrew Herron give him anything in the passing game to take off pressure off Benger in the backfield? I think John Prather, Graham Schilling, two talented options out wide, so this offense has the potential to be great, just quarterback play hasn't been good. So I think it's extremely important for Andrew Herron to start off this contest well with early completions to gain confidence, because if not, Carnegie Mellon is not afraid to dial him back to under 20 attempts per game like they have been doing in the last two games. And if that happens, you're asking a lot from Benger to have one of his monster games to keep up with Bethany, because this is a high-powered offense.
Yeah. CMU against Westminster only completed passes to 3 different receivers. That blows my mind. Westminster completed passes to 6 different receivers, and we can't name a receiver on Westminster when their leading guys are a fullback and a running back. And you look at this team defensively against Paul Colombo, who entered the game throwing more interceptions and throwing for fewer yards than any quarterback in the PAC. They allowed him to run for 100 yards and not turn the football over. And Sam Benger, he was at a pace that's really hard to sustain. 3.2 yards a carry, his lowest total of the season. His next lowest total being 194 yards. That's how effective he's been this season. And it's really challenging for Andrew Herron. He's 9th in passing yards a game, only ahead of Paul Colombo and a St. Vincent quarterback who hasn't qualified. It's difficult to wrap my head around how ineffective this offense has been, despite having Division III's leading rusher through the first 4 weeks. Last in pass defense, 7 sacks in just 4 games, dead last in the conference. Opponents convert 47% of all third downs. Even in turnover margin, average in the red zone and defensively. It's hard to pick out a spot where CMU is extraordinary outside of Benger. In a lot of places, things are negative for Carnegie Mellon. And like in Bethany, like you guys pointed out, those 5 consecutive scoring drives in the second and third quarter just jumped out at me, and I wanted to see what was going on offensively during that scoring run for Bethany. A pick, 3 and out, halftime, and all of a sudden there's 35 points on the board.
Just a snowball effect.
Those are the momentum plays when you have a 3 and out and the other team is just going down and scoring. Because I believe in Bethany's defense and being able to adjust, but when it's just all happening so fast, it's hard. And you look at their offense: Eric Blinn 9 for 133, Tyler Ambush 9 for 81. You see the offensive day. Oh man, Bethany must have played well.
The reason why, and I'll get to your point, 19 for 70 on third down this season. That's last in third down conversion rate. Lincoln Reyes, for as talented as he is, has been inefficient on third down so far this season.
Great on first and second down.
And has 7 interceptions. So when you're turning the ball over and not effective on third down, those things can happen.
The first-year quarterbacks. Jake Doherty has had similar problems. Hiroshima and Grove City. Like when it's your first time at this level playing quarterback, these things happen. And it's unfortunate considering the studs Bethany has defensively.
And really, the only running back in the nation, as you were talking about Sam Benger, keeping the pace on that is Leonard Fournette from LSU. But that's a whole different animal when you're running for 200-plus yards per game. But this Bethany defense, and I think that is the matchup to watch in this game, can Bethany's defense, after allowing 180 yards on the ground to Case Western as a team, contain Sam Benger? Because if Bethany is capable of doing that with the names you had already mentioned, Potier, Radar, Hayden, the list goes on this Bethany defense, because it's still a good defense, despite what happened last week. Can they contain Sam Benger? And if they can, this Bethany team, if the offense continues to roll as it has in the past, it's going to be a tough contest for Carnegie Mellon. But Carnegie Mellon, proving against Westminster last week, they're not going to roll over and die. And they have the opportunity to possibly win.
And I think the thing is, whoever wins this contest is right into the thick of things with Westminster at the top of that second tier in the PAC, and potentially has an outside shot at an ECAC bowl bid. I think it's interesting. Right there, you have Thomas More, Case Western, and W&J at the top. Westminster, and then one of these two teams is fluctuating right for that number 5 spot. But let's move on, guys, to our featured matchup of the week. Thank you to head coach Kurt Reiser and the Thiel Tomcats for being featured as this week's PAC Football Focus. Let's get into it. They're 1-4 overall, winless in PAC play, 0-3 against the Westminster Titans, 3-2 overall, 2-1 in conference play. This is a 3 o'clock kickoff in Greenville, Pennsylvania on homecoming. And guys, this has been one of the more underrated rivalries in the PAC over the last 5 seasons, with Westminster owning the edge 3-2, but we all remember the 2013 thriller that went 4 overtimes that Thiel eventually won. And going back to last year, a 40-28 contest at Westminster that the Titans were able to win. It was all Westminster in the first half as the Titans scored 31 unanswered points before Thiel added a touchdown before halftime. Thiel made a comeback to get within 2 scores before Taryn Cervantes Levine broke through with a 47-yard touchdown reception with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter to put the game out of reach for Thiel. And this was a battle of quarterbacks that then freshman Paul Colombo eventually won and was his breakout game with 317 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. But Ryan Radke really did everything for Thiel in this one, passing 24 of 53 times for 323 yards and 3 touchdowns to an interception, but also ran the ball 19 times for 62 net rushing yards and a touchdown. What do we see in this year in this battle in respect to quarterback play?
Ryan Radke, not just him, but you look at the players around him last year in that game as well. The top ball carriers for Thiel are weapons for the team. Taylor Fink, Brandon Dice, and 168 of those 323 yards that Radke had through the air and 2 touchdowns went to Marcus Johnson. And Marcus Johnson, PAC Newcomer of the Year a season ago. And this is a team in flux, and they're very similar to what we have going on here at Waynesburg in the sense that there's large turnover at a number of different positions.
84 freshmen and sophomores.
My goodness.
84.
But it's different in the Waynesburg situation because you have guys in place to step into a lot of these roles. You have a lot of newcomers now who haven't been in the system who are stepping into these roles. And it's hard to find bright spots. Riley Shane is certainly one of them. But otherwise, you're just looking for progression out of the season. Shane, 9.5 tackles per loss, 4.5 sacks. First in the conference in tackles for loss, tied for first in sacks. And it's been a struggle. A big loss at St. Vincent, 55 points given up in the first half. 7 touchdowns allowed in under a minute, 3 touchdowns allowed in under 15 seconds. These are explosive plays that the defense is allowing, and that's certainly an issue. And it's also a combination of turnovers deep in its own territory. 6 giveaways only turned into 17 points, most of them coming in the second half last week. We saw a couple of different quarterbacks, 4 guys attempted passes, 3 of them threw interceptions. And really, I've mentioned this the past few weeks, 5 of the top 6 tacklers gone. In this game against Westminster last season, top 5 tacklers on this Thiel defense gone. They're completely different than the top 5 tacklers that led the Tomcats defense 1 week ago against St. Vincent. There's a lot of turnover. The constant from last season is Ryan Radke, and he was a guy, he gave Waynesburg fits last season when Waynesburg didn't allow anyone to convert over 50% of third downs. He was able to do it. He is just not enough by himself to be the difference in games, unfortunately, this year, and they're winless in the conference. But against Westminster, Paul Colombo hasn't been great. He's thrown more interceptions than anyone else. So this is a chance for Thiel, an opportunity defensively to try to get on track.
And when was the last time you saw a team outgain another team by almost 300 yards like Westminster did last week and only win the game by 10 points, 26-16? 289 yards on the ground, only 197 yards passing. 2 100-yard rushers last week with Dominique McKinley and Paul Colombo. But for this Thiel team right now, it was the special teams unit that got things kicked off for them with a 90-yard kickoff return. Didn't score until midway through the fourth quarter again with a 7-yard touchdown run. By that time, St. Vincent had the cavalry out on the bench at that point with the second, third teamers in. But for Ryan Radke, he has to 100% be effective in this game for Thiel to get that first win of the season. Last week, Ryan Radke only totaled 111 yards of total offense. 8 for 18 passing for 79 yards and a pick. ran 8 times for 22 yards, averaging 2.8 yards per clip. And again, the receiving core, there's no name that really hops out at you. Alex Horvatits, 4 receptions, 43 yards. When will we see a playmaker for Thiel that comes out and finally steps up besides Ryan Radke having to do everything week in and week out? Got some production out of Nick Black with 12 carries for 56 yards, so we're seeing some different running backs. We mentioned Daly and Ingram earlier in the year, but haven't seen them, mentioned throughout the past few weeks.
The defense being,
you can't play out baby every week.
When you're down 2, 3, 4 scores,
well, neither of them
you can't run the ball.
Neither of them got a carry last week.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. What we've seen out of the Thiel team in past years is you've seen a different mix of different players getting opportunities, minus Marcus Johnson. You knew what you were getting out of him week in and week out, and Ryan Radke, Taylor Fink. Those are 3 names that saw the majority of the carries and the receptions, but later on in the year it started to change around, and that's what's happened again this year. No consistency I see on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I just think this is going to be a huge challenge for Thiel's offense to get what head coach Kurt Reiser considers his best when his offense is at its best, and that's all the things that we've talked about. Running the football, controlling the tempo and time of possession, to take chances of big play opportunities when presented, because this Westminster rush defense, 3rd best in the conference, holding opposing offenses to just 115 yards per game. The Titans held Banger to under 100 yards, Thomas Moore's entire unit to just 107 yards, and Ryan Ruffing to 84 yards, even though he did have 4 touchdowns. 15 turnovers forced by this unit. That's tops in the PAC, led by linebacker Matt Quinn, who leads the PAC with 56 tackles, and defensive back Gator Phillips already changed the game once this year when the interception returned for touchdown. As much as Reiser doesn't want this game put on Radke's shoulders, I'm afraid he's going to have to. Use his top 2 targets, Ron Howard, Alex Horvatits, and the line has to do a better job. Get Kevin Daly going in the backfield. He and Evan Ingram, like you said, Sean, haven't had that many opportunities to prove themselves during the past few weeks because the defense has got down early. So it seems like it's going to be the storyline each week for Thiel. Keep the game close within 2 offensive possessions, and let Radke be the magician that he can be. And as you mentioned, Andy, Colombo, turnover prone with 8 interceptions, and this is a offense that had 4 turnovers last week against CMU. So for Thiel, sell out on Don McKinley, who's been one of the best backs in the conference, and make Paul Colombo win this game through the air. Colombo has the ability to do so, but I think that's Thiel's best shot. Final thoughts.
2 quick points here from Westminster. Westminster did put out backup quarterback Shamon Walker for a couple of series, 1 for 4, 9 yards, 2 interceptions. With Westminster, Paul Colombo might be the very best quarterback on the roster, and he played a very good game, his best game of the season last week against CMU. But the defense, really impressive, holding CMU under 200 yards of total offense. 10 of the 16 points came off turnovers inside Westminster territory in the red zone. The touchdown drive starting at the 10. Westminster, very impressive to start this season.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for your analysis again. As always, we'll be back next week to recap Week 6, preview Week 7. It's always an interesting week in the PAC. And for the PAC Football Focus, we'll be talking to head coach Gino DeMarco of Geneva College for the PAC Football Focus, and we'll be back for Week 7. Thanks for tuning in. It's the PAC Pregame Show here on PACathletics.org.